Welcome into another edition of TPI Talk. My name is Scott Hardy, and I'm joined today by the editor of the Alexander City Outlook, Mitch Sneed, to discuss our 125-year anniversary of the Outlook. Mitch, thanks for joining us.
Just want to go on the record saying I haven't been here all 125 years.
That would have been a feat in itself. That would have been the headline for any of those publications. But Mitch, we started things off by talking to Kenneth and kind of talking about his relationship with the paper. So I'll start the same way with you. Can you talk about how you became affiliated with the Outlook and how long you've been here?
Well, I'm in my fourth year now, and it's kind of a crazy story. I'd worked in Alabama before. I was at the Opelika Auburn News for about 5 years, and they transferred me to Virginia to be a publisher, and I was horrible at it. I'm a news guy. That's what I do, and I came back to Georgia and was working at a paper there, and Kenneth had gone through some changes here, and it's funny, a few years back, before I came back to Georgia, I'd actually applied for a job here as a reporter. I just wanted to get back in news. It didn't really matter to me, and things didn't work out then, and all. And Kenneth was looking for a publisher. Turned to a friend of his who's a publisher, also who had been a publisher that I worked for in Georgia. And he said, "If you're looking for a news guy, call Mitch Sneed. He's one of the best I've ever been around." And he knew that my wife was from Alabama, this area over in Opelika, and that I might want to come back. And shoot, I got to thinking I can live in the suburbs of Atlanta and retire there, or retire near the lake someday. And I figured, it wasn't a hard choice. So,
yeah. Well, talking about moving to Alabama, and so you brought up the OA News and then moving to Virginia. You've been involved in some smaller towns. So can you discuss the importance of a newspaper to a small town?
I've been involved in newspapers for about 34 years, pretty much my whole life. I really started when I was 15 years old, working for my hometown paper. I've worked for the largest newspaper in Georgia. I've worked for the smallest newspaper in Georgia, daily newspaper. So had a lot of varied experience. But what I've found is that, you make a bigger difference in this business at a smaller paper. We're kind of in a weird situation here in that the Montgomery television stations will parachute in if it's something really big, or they see we have a big story, then they coattail and come in 2 days later and pretend like they've discovered it. But we really don't have a lot of competition, which can be a great thing or can be a bad thing. For us, the people depend on us. That's the great thing. If they want to know it, they've got to get it from you. Sure, there's social media and other places like that you can get bits and pieces, but regardless of what the Republican administration says, to get real professional news, you have to turn to your local newspaper, and we love filling that role here. And I think that's why it's so important. And it's happened that way, and that's why I really cherish working on community newspapers. I've worked at the Journal-Constitution, was a community sports editor there, and I loved it, and that's kind of my dream job. I'd always dreamed of doing that and writing columns and things like that, but I just felt like I was such a small piece of a big machine, and sometimes by the time you got done with your work, you didn't know didn't recognize it. But at this level, I feel like we really make a difference, and I think that's why this paper has been such a part of this community for 125 years, and actually even longer. There was a newspaper for about 12 years before it became the Outlook. So I think that's why it's so popular, because it tells that story every day of what's going on here, and that's why it's so important.
Well, kind of parlaying that and segue into my next question. If you look at some large municipalities like Birmingham or Mobile, Montgomery, Huntsville, those areas, you've seen a decrease in circulation and the actual content in the paper itself and advertising dollars. What do you think has been the biggest attributing factor to the Outlook being able to maintain its significance to the area?
Well, I think we've stayed relevant, and we've stayed hyper-local. And in my time here, up until we've had a few months where we've been down a little bit, but we've grown from the time that I came on. And I think the biggest thing there is we don't have a lot of we don't have the wire service. We don't have a lot of national news. We do some national opinion and things like that. But if you want to know what's going on here, you've got to come to us. We don't pretend to be an expert on what's going on in Afghanistan or what's going on in Washington. We're not an expert on that. But we are an expert on what's happening here. If it's happening, we usually know about it. We try to get it in the newspaper as quickly as we can. And the other thing is just taking an honest approach about things, where if you tell us about it, we'll tell you if we can cover it, if we can, if we think it's a story, if it's not, and doing what people want you to do or ask you to do, and tell them, be honest and open with them. and be down the middle. We're going to be there when things are good. We're going to be there when things are bad, and hopefully by doing that and building that reputation, that people will come to where, even in the bad times, I've gone to a murder scene recently where the people were so nice to me, and it's a tough time for them, but they knew that at other community events I'd been there, I'd made relationships with them, and so I think that's the key, is to just to be accurate, honest, open, and everywhere. I had a great compliment of not too long ago. I've started doing some live broadcast and junk like that, and somebody said, Mitch Sneed is everywhere. Well, I'm really not, but if we can be everywhere, if it's happening and we got somebody there, then I feel like we've done our job.
We're here with Mitch Sneed, the editor of the Alexander City Outlook, as we discuss the 125-year anniversary of the newspaper. And you've been here 4 years, and during that time, I don't think that there's ever been as much news or polarizing news that we've had, especially on the political scene. Could you maybe reflect back on maybe a couple of your 2 or 3 favorite stories or most memorable moments since you've been the editor here?
Well, I kind of disagree with you a little bit, because I think the news was always here. I think that we've always had this kind of news. Think about it. We had a Fortune 500 company here for a long time. We've had huge news. I think the difference is that the way that we approach it. Sometimes in the past, I don't know if we had the experience or if we had the right people to tell some of those stories, I think it goes back to experience. During when K.A. Turner was here, the paper was a great paper, and they've done that. But it all goes with the people. And I'm not stupid enough to think it's me or anything like that, but I do think that we've got some people here who are willing to learn, they're willing to listen, and the biggest thing is they're willing to question. If something doesn't smell right, they're willing to ask the questions, and I think that's what it takes to do that. I think the biggest, we've had several big stories. Obviously this year, or last year, we had the city council fight, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it, where the mayor punched Tony Goss, and that story's actually won us a bunch of awards, the picture in particular and the story. We've had some other pretty big stories. David Granger did a big piece on the Will Maxwell thing before the revelations of Harper Lee writing a book about it came out, so that was a big story for us. We had probate court incident where the judge was accused of some things and admitted doing them, and faced them head on. And I think that's the thing, is he came in and was honest with us, because we were trying to be fair. And of course that won an award this year too. And just a lot of things like that. We've also had some murders that we've covered. I think one of the most bizarre is the one where a guy was shot while cutting his grass, and we were actually interviewed the guy who did it before the police did. We were interviewing him on the scene before the police even interviewed him. Of course, he told a lie, and we told the lie that he told. But it's that whole thing that, again, it's being there. If you hear it, you better go, because it's not going to come to you. There's not a lot going on in this newsroom, and if we stay here to cover stuff, we're not doing our job. So, but I think those are some of the ones that ring out. I think before over the Clay McDaniel case is going to be a big one that we've covered while we've been here. And then the other thing that I think we've done is touched on a lot of things that make a difference in the community. Some community service things. Our parade edition that tells the story of success here, I think that's a big thing that we do. We've had some really good editions like that, and just the daily coverage. I think we're putting things out there about how government works and asking people to get involved. And that's, we can do it. I mean, but people think you're picking on people if you do it all the time. It's more for people like, I know you're a city councilman, you may not like it, but at the same time, the other night when people had actually hired lawyers and had almost 80 people at a city council meeting, that's a good thing. I know it's got to be daunting sitting up there, but at the same time, to ask people to get involved and at least have a voice in it. Now, they may not always agree, but at least they've made their position known. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is get people to ask those questions. And when we can, we answer them for them.
And that's kind of something that I discussed with Kenneth as well. I think the biggest thing that, outside of providing the daily coverage and, the youth sports level, or, seeing grandmother's child or mom's child in the newspaper, that's a very important part of why we're successful. But I think that the thing that the Outlook provides in any newspaper in a small town is ensuring that the electorate is informed and educated. And I think that you've done a tremendous job, whether people agree with what you have to say or not, or if you like what you're saying or not. At least you're doing your best to try to inform the people and let them make an educated decision or choice by themselves.
Yeah, if half the people are mad at me every day, I've done my job.
There you go.
Today they might like me, tomorrow they might hate me, but then we've done a pretty good job. But I think I had a guy who's a lot smarter than me in this business. tell me that the goal of the newspaper, when you pick up the paper, it should be an accurate snapshot of what happened the day before in that community. If you can do that, I mean, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. We try to put 5 different kinds of stories on the front page every day. Sometimes it doesn't work out just because of news, but we try to have something that's informative. We try to have something that's from the judicial or a criminal area. We try to have a feature, which is usually something from schools or an event that's happening. Then we call it a Hey Martha. It's something that just makes get people talking, something that you didn't know, or just say, hey, did you see that? That's unusual, or whatever. So those are kind of the formula we have for our front page, and then of course some days we do it well, some days we don't, but that's our goal.
Well, if you had a message to the community as we wrap things up, what would that be? And I guess explaining the significance of the 125 years and really parlaying or relaying to them that it's the readership, and the readers are what make the paper.
Yeah, a newspaper is one of the only business in the world that is protected by the Constitution. The only business that's mentioned in the Constitution of the United States is a newspaper or the press. Mm-hmm. So it's an awesome responsibility that we have, but it's not that we have. We're only a tool for the people. So we're only as good as the tips we get. We're only as good as the information we get. I do go to a lot of things. I am a lot of places, but most of my stuff, people call me, they'll text me, they'll tell me, hey, this is going on. That's how we find out about things. So be a reporter. Be a reporter and tell us. And the other thing is, when you buy a newspaper and you take time with it, you're giving us your time. You've invested some time in this paper. And we're going to continue, just like they have for 125 years, to bust our tail every day to give you something that's worthy of your time. And we just thank people for allowing us into their homes. It's really gratifying some days to be sitting at a booth at Who's, and 2 things away you hear people talk about something that's in the newspaper. Those are the days that I go home and sleep pretty well, because you know that you've informed somebody, made them laugh, made them cry, made them a little smarter. I don't know if I can make anybody smarter, but some days I like to think I can. So.
Well, I can definitely say, since in your 4 years here, you definitely entrenched yourself within the community, and regardless of whatever role we're in, I do think that it's great to have someone who is invested in making sure that people are aware of what's happening. And I think that's really the significance and importance of having a newspaper. When you have an editorial staff and reporting staff like we have, I think that you'll continue to have great content and provide that for the community.
We hope so. I love what I'm doing. I mean, I get up every day and love coming to work, and I know there's a lot of people who can't say that. And I've been blessed to be able to do it for a long time, and I love doing it here.
Absolutely. Well, that's Mitch Sneed, the editor of the Alexander City Outlook, and this has been another edition of TPI Talk. My name is Scott Hardy. See you next time.